started here. So we do these webinars every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock, usually on topics regarding Medicare. Like next week, for example, we're doing one on the insulin savings program with Medicare plans. Obviously, there's only a few companies that participate, but the ones that do are massive savings on expensive insulins. But anyway, usually topics like that. Once in a while, we'll throw some life or annuity stuff in there. But today we're going to talk about chronic conditions plans. If you're on this webinar, you will get a recording. I also should say, if for future reference you want the information for a future webinar, but you can't make it at that time, just register, because everybody that registers will get the recording. And then the last thing is, if you have any questions while we go through this, webinar should run probably 15-20 minutes. If you have any questions while we go through this, just send them in to the webinar, and I will answer them for you at the end. So having said that, I think I'll get us started. So today we're going to talk about chronic conditions CSNP plans, talk about the plans themselves, talk about what qualifying conditions there are for them, how it creates a special election, the process for enrollment and verification, which is pretty standard except for the verification part, but we'll touch on that, and then quoting and enrolling these plans through Sunfire, and I will fumble through switching out of the presentation to the Sunfire site to show you how to do that. And like I said, I'll probably fumble through that a bit, but we'll get there ultimately. And so we'll get started. So for those not familiar, a CSNP plan is a special needs plan. It's not a dual. It's a chronic conditions plan. And back, I don't know, when I got into Medicare, there were CSNP plans in just about every state. Even Connecticut had a bunch, New York. Now there's not quite as many, but nonetheless. Basically, a CSNP plan is a plan that is made for somebody with a specific chronic condition. The conditions available, there's actually 15 categories. I really didn't know how many there were, quite frankly, and I looked into it and realized CMS actually has slated 15 categories with various medical conditions in all those categories. So more or less covers every chronic condition that there is. However, the carriers pick and choose which chronic condition categories they want to cover. So some of the categories I've never seen a chronic conditions plan for. And again, the carriers choose which ones they want. So the more common ones you see are COPD, that's always a big one. Chronic conditions plan for cardiovascular disease, like artery disease, arrhythmia, vascular disease are some common ones. Almost always see diabetes ones, usually for type 1 and 2. And then heart failure, so congestive heart failure is often a CSNP plan as well. So these look just like regular Advantage plans, chronic conditions plans, but again, they're made for somebody specifically with that condition. And we'll talk a little more about that process in a minute. The plans usually, I said, but not always, because there are exceptions, of course, but they usually have better benefits, I should say, than a standard MAPD. Usually things like a little bit lower out-of-pocket max, and they tend to be stronger on benefits that are related to the plan's chronic condition type. So like a CSNP for diabetes tends to favor more and have lower copays for things that people with diabetes get treated for. Also on some of the plans, they'll usually have the standard provider network, but then they'll have additional specialty hospitals and physicians that specialize specifically in that condition. And then they almost always tweak the formularies to include extra medications or to better cover medications specific to that condition. A common thing you see, and I was just looking at it, like Ultimate plans in Florida, for example, they have 4 different CSNP plans for 4 different conditions, and they do a tier 1 and 5. They tend to have those drugs specific to that condition in tier 1 and 5, and they will cover those drugs even in the gap. So on their diabetes plan, they have some drugs some insulins and other diabetic medications that are in tier 1 and 5, and there would be no donut hole for those drugs. That's an example. So one of the big things about CSNP plans is the SEP it creates. So it creates a year-long special election. So if you have somebody who's on a Medicare Advantage plan or any kind of plan for that matter, if there's a CSNP plan available that matches up with their chronic condition, they can enroll in that chronic conditions plan the first of any month all year. They just have to verify they have that chronic condition. So it's a year-long, endless special election for people to enroll in that chronic conditions plan. So it creates a great opportunity for us as agents, because if you run into somebody, and again, there's enough, in some states, there's enough chronic conditions plans where it covers a lot of different things. If you run into somebody and you can match them up with a CSNP that's available, you could enroll them first of the next month as a special election because they have that condition. Regular enrollment process, you can enroll them through Sunfire, which I'll talk about. You can enroll them through a paper application like normal if you wanted. Like Lean and Ascend, enrollments would be available. The one thing that's different, though, is they need to verify the chronic condition to stay enrolled in the plan. So they don't need to verify the chronic condition to get in. So if you meet somebody and they have diabetes and you're going to enroll them in a chronic conditions plan for diabetes, you can enroll them, you can state they have diabetes, and they'll get enrolled first of the next month with a special election. But in order to stay enrolled, they have to fill out a verification form that their doctor signs verifying that chronic condition. The way that works is they'll be able to enroll without the form. The month they're enrolled, they have that 1 month to get that form filled out by the doctor and submitted to the carrier to stay enrolled in the plan. If that form is not submitted within that first month they're enrolled, then they'll be disenrolled from the plan. So they got to verify that chronic condition with a form the doctor signs. I have an example of the form in a little bit here. So it's fairly common for people to say, yes, I have a chronic condition, and they likely do. That matches up. You enroll them in the plan, but then they never get the verification form filled out. So what's going to happen in that case is at the end of that first month of them being enrolled, they'll be disenrolled, but that then does create a 2-month special election to put them back in any other plan. So special election to get in. If they don't verify the condition, then you've got a 2-month special election to move them back to something else. Hopefully that was fairly clear. The other thing that can happen, I really never ran into this one too often, but theoretically, if you enroll a member, they verify the chronic condition, they're in the plan, and then down the road, they no longer suffer from that chronic condition, and that's discovered, they will then be disenrolled. But again, it will create another SEP. They'd have a 2-month window then if they were disenrolled to enroll back into something else. So CSIP, we'll talk about plan availability. Like I said, when I first got in the business, a long time ago, I'm kind of dating myself, but when I got in a long time ago, there were CSNP plans in just about every state. That's no longer the case. Some states don't have any. Some states have 3 or 4 companies offering them. So it depends, depending on the state, and there will be various carriers in a given state offering them, and in some states not at all. So I'll give you some examples. The Northeast does not have many of them. There's not much, if nothing, in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania. You will get one that pops up once in a while, but often there aren't really many options available. They seem to be most prevalent in the Southeast. There's a number of states that have them. I listed them there. Florida, Georgia are examples, North Carolina. They have a number of companies offering chronic conditions plans for a variety of conditions. So in the Southeast states, common carriers offering them are United, Freedom, Simply, Ultimate, WellCare, Humana. Out west, you do see them as well, usually being offered by Scan, Health Net, and Anthem. Humana and UHC to a lesser extent in a few states. Midwest is more like the North, where there's a number of states that don't have them, but there certainly are some that do in the Midwest. And when they are offered, usually they're by Humana and WellCare. So next, we're going to look at an example of the verification form. I grabbed United's just because that's the one I had handy. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's a 1-page form. more or less, it's just a form that the doctor signs, or fills out rather, and signs, just saying, yep, we're verifying that this person has this chronic condition. That form is then sent back to you or to the carrier to send in to verify that so they can stay enrolled in the plan. Pretty straightforward form, not very complicated. And the one I grabbed was for the UHC. They have a new chronic conditions plan. It's got the Walgreens logo on it, so it's endorsed by Walgreens, and it's chronic conditions plan for diabetes, chronic heart failure, and cardiovascular disease. So it's for all three, basically built into one plan. The person doesn't have to have all three; they just have to have one of those three or a combination of them. So it's just giving you an example of the verification form. So how do you quote chronic conditions plans? Well, there's a couple ways. You can quote them through the carrier portals, but obviously, if you're not sure what chronic condition plans are available in a given area, that's kind of a laborious way to try to do it. The easiest way to quote that is through the Pinnacle Quote site. If you haven't used the Pinnacle Quote site, it's quick and it's easy. You go to pfsinsurance.com. You will need a username and password. It doesn't cost you anything to use it. If you have carriers with us, you just have to get the username and password from us. And you can go to pfsinsurance.com, click on the Quotes tab at the top, and then click on Special Needs Plans. And you can just throw in a zip code, and it will show you all the carriers and any chronic condition plans that are available in that given area. You can also quote these plans on Connecture and Sunfire. However, on Connecture, they'll show up, but you can't enroll people in chronic conditions plans through Connecture. On Sunfire, you can. So when it comes to dual plans and chronic condition plans, Sunfire is really usually the best option to use when quoting those. And I'm right on time today, so what I'm going to do is give you an example of taking a look at the plans on Sunfire. And I'll just take a minute just to show it to you. All right, here's where I'm going to try to bumble through this. Let's see. We're going to give it a try, see if it works. Yay, how about that? So here is the site. So this is the PFS insurance site. If you want to go to the site, you just go to connect4medicare.com. That's all you got to type in. You do need a username and password to use either Connecture on the left or Sunfire on the right. Again, they both cost you nothing, so you just got to get the username and password from us to use them. And what I'm going to do is give you an example of this. So we'll click on Sunfire. All right, we'll click on Quote and Enroll. And I'm going to put in my zip code. This is for Florida. I'll click Save. And we're going to go over here and click Special Needs Plans. And there you go. Now, it'll show both dual special needs and any chronic conditions plans that are available. So if we scroll down, we start to see a few, like the Freedom one, Optimum has one. We'll go down to the Humana one because I know they have one. There it is. So there's the Humana Gold Plus plan for diabetics. By the way, if there's a company that has a chronic condition plan like Ultimates, for example, and it doesn't say what conditions it's for, you can always click the detail tabs. It'll give you access to the summary of benefits and everything so you can see what conditions specifically this plan is for. If you want to enroll somebody, the plans that are eligible for enrollment, you would just click the enroll button to start enrolling the person. I'm not going to go through a demonstration of Sunfire today. I just wanted to show you how you can find these plans and see them. If you wanted to see the details of the plan, you just click the details button, and then it's going to give you all the details. Now, we're lucky because like Humana says specifically their plan is a chronic conditions plan for diabetics. Some of them don't, though. I mean, you would think they all would, but they don't. So when you need to see that, all you have to do is if you scroll down to the bottom, you can click the summary of benefits. And in the summary, even with the companies where it doesn't say specifically what the chronic conditions plan is for, it will explain it in the beginning of the plan on all of them. So that way you can figure out, okay, this plan's just for diabetics, or a lot of them are for like multiple things: diabetics, COPD, and cardiovascular disease. But that way, it'll give you an example of what they're for. Okay. Oops. That's it. We kept it quick. I'm going to see if we have any questions. If you have any questions, hopefully they were sent into the webinar. I'll try to answer them now. Just a reminder, anybody that attended will get a recording of this. And for future reference, if you can't attend but you want the recording, just register for the webinar, even if you won't make it, and we'll send you the recording. So let's see if we have any questions. We do have a few. So questions regarding somebody who has MS and scoliosis. They're on Medicare due to disability. They turn age 65 soon. And they have the person on a regular Medicare supplement and a Part D plan. And they're saying they understand that the person has a new initial eligibility period when they turn 65. Yes, they do. So I'm confirming that's correct. So just to summarize, somebody who is on Medicare due to disability prior to age 65, when they turn 65, yes, they do have a new election because they turned 65. Reason for that is that obviously under the age of 65, you can only get certain Medicare supplements. And when you turn 65, then you're eligible for the 65 plus med sups, so the whole gamut of med sups versus the limited ones for being under 65. So yes, turning 65, even though you already had Medicare due to disability, does create a new election period. I think that's the only question we had. If there's any other questions, I'll hang out here for another minute or two and see if I can answer them for you. But it doesn't look like there's anything else coming in. So appreciate you coming on today. We'll do 2 new webinars next week on Wednesday and Thursday at 1. We'll send out the recording. And if you have any other additional questions that come up later, just call us or email us, and we'd be happy to answer those for you. Other than that, I appreciate you attending today, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks.